is episode 55 For No Particular Reason, which I got to tell you a funny thing after. But I am your host, Kerri Lewis, along with Yankov, a hypnotist and a dear friend of mine who likes to chop it up with me over random stuff. And today we have an amazing woman, Shay Sparks you have the Shay Sparks show. I don't know. You'll tell the listening audience in a minute. But she's a vibe. As soon as I saw her, I met her on a call with a mutual friend. I'm like, oh, I got to talk to her. Her glasses sold me. And then the rest was history. And now we have you here. So welcome, Shay.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored and I'm so excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yanko, you got anything to say? Because I could take the floor for the whole conversation.
No, I like. Well, the audience and the viewers don't know that we kind of had a pre-vibe before the show, and you were guys ready to explode, and I'm just like letting it all unfold, and I want to see where this is gonna go.
All right. So, as tradition, dictates, Shay, we typically have our guests guide the conversation. So, anything you want to impart on our listening audience today?
Yes. So I run a community and where we have a connection call every Thursday. And it is by far one of my favorite things that I do of all the things I do. And the reason I love it is it just is empowering. We have accountability for each other. We have camaraderie. We laugh, we cry, we whatever, right? But the best thing is we celebrate our wins. And yesterday, I threw in there because this is fairly new. We started in December. It's fairly new community. And I said, hey, I've been thinking, do we want to add guest experts here to come in and like share what they have to share with us and that we can take from it? And immediately I got the feedback of, well, yeah, but we can't like lose this. And I was like, tell me more. And it just makes me so excited. So basically what they're saying is that they like love sharing their wins. And then we share what we're committed to making in the next week. And that gives the space for accountability to, to anyone that wants to reach out to each other and said, hey, how's that going? How can I support you in that? And so one of our actually, she was a guest for the first time and just checking it out. She was sharing that she's a podcaster and she was celebrating her 100th podcast episode. So yay, way to go, Darlene. And I said, so how are you going to celebrate? And she's like, oh, I don't know. So then the conversation is always organic and just kind of like this. It just free flows, see where it goes. And the question then became to everyone, like, how do you celebrate your wins? And if you don't, why not?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you guys, how do you celebrate your wins? Kerri, do you celebrate them? Do you shout it from the rooftops or do you kind of more reserved and like, yeah, that was good and keep moving?
Oh, no. I think I'm the bee's knees. Let me just tell you, I am my biggest champion and advocate, and I had to be because having been immersed in addiction and severe chronic depression for years, what I fundamentally learned is gratitude and celebrating they rewire your brain.
Yes.
So it's super important, and that my celebration looks differently all the time. Like earlier today, I needed to cry. Like my body was like, girl, you got to release stuff. And so I cried in the shower and I'm like, crying. And then I got out and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to celebrate that I cried. So I put on the song Wobble and I started dancing the wobble, doing wobble baby, wobble baby. And like, you know what I mean? And other times it's just, you know what? Great job. But I fundamentally believe that if we do not celebrate ourselves, we will never know how powerful we are because we're constantly enslaved to external validation. And so that means we're at the whim of another person's opinion. And that is where you truly lose any sense of self. So, yes, celebrating for me is like a non negotiable. And I encourage all of my clients all the time. I don't care if all you did was pick up a glass of water and drink a sip, celebrate that,
Mm,
baby.
I love
That's
that.
right.
Yanko, what about you?
That's right. I'm I'm kind of the same. Like I used to not celebrate a lot, but now I'm like, yes. And or like I might even do my happy dance like oh depends on the mood, like how I feel like. If in that
Yeah.
moment I'm very excited. So I just go with that.
Mm,
But it's interesting because lately I'm having those moments more and more, that I have those moments where I'm excited. And if I observe it, I'll see that there's no reason like outside to be excited or something that made me excited. I'm just excited because there's this feeling of excitement. So, kind of like what Kerri was saying, if the body feels like it wants to cry, it'll cry. So if the body feels like I need to move, like I might be driving the car and there's like a drumming beat going on, and I might just do this, and continue on, or chant or whatever I feel like, and I take that excitement and see where it goes. So I just go with that.
Yeah,
mm,
and I want to add, the other day I put up a quote that I read in some of my spiritual studies, and it's, let me be today neither arrogant or falsely humble. And I think
mhm,
that's a really important point that people need to understand. I think we diminish our light when we think that, you know, we've been taught, oh my God, don't think too highly of yourselves. Don't make it like a big deal. Always put others above you. And then we look at a world who truly, if you look at the collective, is so disconnected from self,
mm,
so like distrustful. And so I always encourage people, the reality is you've got to be your own superhero
mm,
in all areas of your life. And you start by celebrating the tiny, tiny wins. It doesn't matter how small. You celebrate that, and then it's cumulative, and it becomes easier and easier to, one, stack more wins, but two, to actually feel good about yourself. Because at first it might feel really weird, like, oh my
mm.
God, this is awful. And I have so many clients saying, what do you mean celebrate myself? And I'm like, tell yourself you did a good job. And of course, I'm the person who will drop a video in their messaging, talk about, I'm celebrating you. And they're like, oh my God, she's extra, which I love, because who doesn't want somebody extra in your life sometimes?
I love that. Well, first of all, I wanna say I love that you both have found ways to celebrate yourself, whether it's, just doing a little happy dance, putting on your favorite song, drinking a sip of water. I love that because you've been self-aware enough to find the thing that works for you. I always say to have my clients lift their arm in the air, bend at the elbow, and pat yourself on the back. "That's right, baby, you did it." So and I also love, could you please repeat that quote about the arrogance, and is it less humbled?
Yeah, and so it's, let me be today neither arrogant nor falsely humble.
Mm,
Because I'm humble. And what I mean by that, Shay, is you and me are equal. Yanko and I are equal. I'm equal to the person who's pushing cans on the street who doesn't have a nickel to their name. And
mm,
I'm equal to the person who's overseeing the United States of America right now. Right. And so it's important for me to recognize I am love, right? That's truly what I maintain. I know I come from love, I exist in love, I choose love, and when I'm out of alignment of love, I get quiet until I come back to that alignment, which means I'm connected to everybody,
mm,
which means I am just as powerful and equal to you. But understand, I know how powerful I am. And I think our work, all three of us, is to embody that for other people to recognize that they are just as powerful. It's not
mm,
that we're better than, it's that we've come to the understanding that we know we're limitless. And now it's my responsibility to be a mirror for the next person who may not have dusted off, polished that mirror as much, and then get them to shine as brightly as me.
mm. I love that. The falsely humbled piece. So one of the members yesterday was like, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. And that's where that falsely humbled comes in for sure.
Yep.
And then the consensus is that people in the group, and I can say, because I know both of you, we love celebrating other people, right? So if you look at that, I don't want to brag, so I'm going to keep it to myself, as selfish, because you're not giving the other people opportunity to share your joy,
Mm.
Share
right?
that excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happens is, oh, I got chills. Woo-wee! And so it's, I love this. So what it really is, it's an opportunity to, like what you just said, you give permission to other people the opportunity to celebrate you when all you have to do is share. It's not about being validated because you can't validate yourself. It's you're giving them a piece of opportunity to have joy.
Yep.
Oh, I love that so much.
It,
Yeah, to get this like a vibe and share it, kind of like sharing yourself with whoever you're vibing with. We had a conversation, similar conversation yesterday with Kerri, friend of ours that we know. She interviewed her. She's starting a new project, and it was so exciting. And I was like, man, she's doing this exciting thing. It's going to be huge and big. This holistic healing center. And Kerri was like, yeah, this is going to be like really good. So we took her excitement. I got excited. I got Kerri excited about it. Other people are excited about it. It's like, let's share the joy. So that
Yeah.
and
was
And when we think about it, if we know that we're an energetic being, right? This body is just a meat suit. At the end of the day, you strip that away, we still exist in one. But like joy is a much more powerful energy
Mhm.
than, sitting in even apathy, right? Apathy, oh, I did it. It's cool. So really being able to give yourself permission to express that. And what you said, Shay, resonates because I think about, for me, the one truth is love, right? Love can be shared. It's felt. You know when I am expressing love because it's an energetic exchange that other people feel, even if they cannot logically put words to it. They're like, oh, that woman is a vibe, right? I get it all the time. Nana gets it all the time. Yanko gets it all the time. He pulls over and helps random strangers on the street, right? I'm sure you get it all the time, Shay. Fear cannot be shared. And I'll tell you why. Because fear is an individual experience within the 9 billion people that exist, right? Because what brings me fear isn't what brings you fear and stuff. So I cannot share in fear with you. I can share in love. And I think celebrating is a form of love. It's
Mhm.
being able to bear witness to an individual, an energy, yourself, but really showing up in a different body and sharing in that love, that joy that I think we all have the opportunity to exist in at any given moment. Once we put aside this idea that it's we're being arrogant or we're being we don't want to be braggadocious because that limits us.
Yeah. Hmm. Braggadocious. That's a word for you.
that's why I was thinking the same thing, and I'm like, where is Kerri pulling those out? It's so fun.
Listen, this comes from my mama. I
Mm.
gotta tell you, I'll give kudos to my parents. They come from academia, and reading books saved me.
Hmm.
I didn't finish high school, but you put me up there with the best linguistics, and I gotta tell you, I can pull out some words. And if I don't know one, I'm looking it up because I really like words. In fact, I'll never forget the day my friend shared the word troglodyte, and I'm like, "What is that?" And so now when I'm like joking with my kid, I'm like, "You're a troglodyte." And she just looks at me and I'm like, "I know, you don't get it." And I love it.
Mm. When you said braggadocious, for whatever reason, I literally pictured like a jail cell, like being behind bars.
Mm.
And I am just feeling my way through that. Like, why did that picture show up? And I think that's what it does. It kind of holds our joy, our excitement, our love in when we think we're braggadocious, because that's how fear can show up in our mind, is that we're worried that someone else is going to think we are braggadocious.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I think about Rumi's quote, right? You have the capacity to either lock yourself in a prison or free yourself. And it's really all in the choice that you make in this moment. And it's choice after choice after choice after choice. And Al and I were discussing this yesterday. We've had to make moment by moment by moment choices that either free us or condemn us. And the only person who can do that really truly is ourselves. And that's why I'm always um encouraging people to show up a little bit more in a way that feels right for them. It does not have to make sense to me. It really doesn't. My boyfriend dresses up in cosplay. He showed up at one of our dates dressed as Dora the Explorer to go shopping one day when we first started dating. I'm like, okay, cool. That makes him happy. But in that, he frees himself from the confinement of a prison that says, I need to be anything but what brings me joy in this moment. And
Mm,
that's why I tell people, and I know this to be true because I've experienced it time and time again. We're limitless. We're
mm,
limitless. We just have to give ourselves permission to do the thing that comes to us spontaneously in this moment. Right. So if I want to bust out singing, I just do it instead of thinking, oh my God, this is only the third time I've talked to Shay and she might judge me because I'm singing on my show
mm.
and she may never come back. And we laugh, but that's real talk. That's
Yeah.
what people do. And then they play small. And I think all three of us are here to be like, baby, shine bright. Let that freak, weird, whatever you want to do flag fly, because when you do that for yourself, you can't help but be loving, so you can't hurt anybody else. Really, somebody's perception of you may feel like, oh, what you're doing is wrong, but that's not for you to concern yourself with. Your job is to concern yourself with doing what feels really supportive and nurturing to you, and in doing that, you give other people permission to do the same.
Yes. 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 Good for your boyfriend, I gotta say, dressing up like that. I was listening to a podcast with Will Ferrell, and he, right before Christmas, had dressed up as Buddy the Elf to go to a hockey game. And he's sitting there with a cigarette. So it's like what Buddy does after work, kind of a thing. And I loved it. And he said, I just did it because a thought came to me. And instead of letting fear take over, I just acted. And I gotta say, fear lives in the past and the future. It
Boom.
does not live in the present.
Yep.
And so the fact that what you just said was about taking that action on that spontaneous inspirational thought,
Yep.
instead of overthinking, worrying about it. What are people going to think? You do it. That just gives others to do permission to do the same. And it also builds momentum on the next thing.
Yeah. And I also, I think so. If creation is limitless and we're co-creators with creation, however you define that, right? Like, I don't subscribe to this God like being, I subscribe to love because scientifically, quantum physics has proven that love vibrates at a higher frequency than fear, and that authenticity vibrates at an even higher frequency than love, because authenticity is unconditional love, right?
Mm,
And for me, authenticity is such an oversaturated, overused word right now. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm being authentic." Oh, I'm being. The thing is we are a paradox, right? I can be just as authentic 10 minutes from now, kind of being hot and spicy with the tech lady at Restream because we're going over the same questions ever, as I am right now, showing up and having this conversation. It's what you just reiterated, Shay. It's allowing the present moment to unfold without filter. Now, am I conscientious of how I deliver a message when I'm feeling hot? Yeah, because I understand that one, cause and effect, and force always creates an opposite and equal force, which means if I'm extra spicy and unkind, guess what? The universe is gonna be like, I'm gonna smack you with a little bit of unkindness, Kerri, to remind you that what goes around comes around. But I'm still being authentic. And so it's really just staying in this present moment without this like this overthinking, oh my God, like what's going to happen in this conversation, or oh my God, what happened in the past. It's just allowing it to be unfolding, and that is true authenticity for me.
Mm.
Well, you don't
Wha-
know what's going to happen, anyways, because you know you can't predict the future, and if you're living from the fears of the past, that's not going to get you anywhere. And just because something happened once, it doesn't mean it's going to happen second time or third time on the road. Or you can't predict that the same way you can't predict your thoughts. So in a way, it's a practice to get to that space, to be able to allow more and more. Like she was saying, it gets easier and easier, and you build up on whatever, kind of like loosening it up and getting to the point where you want to be. So yeah, and it happens to me. I'm not perfect. I have to build
What?
up on.
No.
Yeah, right, surprise. But yeah, that's usually how it works.
Well, I love that, Kerri, what you said about authenticity being the purest form of love. And what shows up for me when you say that is self love, because you're so loving yourself that you are just accepting all of who you are, not just the good parts.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, so for me, I don't define things as good, bad, right, or wrong. It's
Mhm.
just an experience,
Yeah.
and it's an experience that has the opportunity to uh teach me more about myself. Like I did a live a couple days ago, and it's so funny because I'm sitting here judging this woman I've never met in my life, right? Judging this woman because she didn't respond to have a one-on-one with me, right? But I caught myself really quickly and I had a laugh, and I'm like, oh, well, why is it that I'm in this space of judgment? And
Mm.
it was super easy to realize, okay, the little girl who's been rejected many many times in her past is feeling rejected right now, and as a result I'm projecting that onto this perfectly fine woman who has every right to do whatever feels right for her, right? But because I'm in that space I'm feeling, and so I realized, one, it's a habit.
Mm.
It's just a habit, and I can let that go, and habits take time to release. And two, I can honor that little girl who felt really rejected and alone and isolated. And then it was fine. And so being able to love myself gives me the ability to see that and let it unfold without condemning myself, and or, right, which I think more people do, separate themselves from this woman who doesn't know me from Adam, who has no idea that I'm making up this ridiculous story in my head about her. And that's the power of self-love, is it's being able to be curious and to inquire about what's coming up for you in the moment without condemning yourself. And that goes back to what Rumi says, man. We put ourselves in a prison so
Mm.
often by judging ourselves for experiences that really have the opportunity to help us heal.
Mm. Yes, I love that you mentioned the inner child, especially when you're talking about rejection, and
Mhm.
that celebrating our wins now is literally celebrating and healing that inner child who has been rejected. Yeah, love this. Love this conversation, guys.
Yeah, it's real talk. And for any of the listeners out there, first off, Yanko and I love uh interaction. So if you have any questions for Shay, for Yanko, for myself, or just want to drop a comment, please feel free to. We love to engage with you guys. But secondly, for anybody who's unaware, celebrating rewires your brain. Your
Mm.
subconscious is just a set of programs, conditions, habits based on in utero till now, or if you believe in past lives, that too. But it's just a set of experiences that has cultivated a set of beliefs. And more often than not, and you can look at the state of the world, right? A lot of those beliefs are fear based. But when you
Mm.
start to celebrate yourself, well, celebrating, to what Shay said, is love. And in that love, you start to reprogram your brain to find more love. And that's where your, like, the reticulating activating system comes in, guys. Your brain, you feed it something and it is going to seek every opportunity to find that thing, which is also why intention setting is awesome. Because if you
Mm.
wake up in the morning and you say, my intention, and these are mine, is to be loved, to be open to receiving love, and to laugh often, the universe is going to be like, okay, that's what your brain wants. Yep. And then inevitably, I have opportunities to show up as love, to receive love. And thank God for being a mom of teenagers and having a boyfriend who dresses as cosplay and all the things. I laugh all the time. I'm just laughing at myself for doing the wobble like a white girl who does not have a big rump, but I was happy to back that up. I'm just saying.
Is there video of that? We got to see it.
Listen, I will make video. There is, I'm not opposed to making a fool of myself in public. That's for sure.
Good for you.
You know, but when you're in the moment, it doesn't really matter because you're having that experience. I've watched you guys. There you go. I've watched you guys do the birthday party where you did the costume with everybody else, and that was awesome because in a way I felt like I was there. You know what I mean? It felt so organic and joyful, and I was like, man, if I was there, I was totally gonna do something, nuts like that, and just go with the flow, you
Well,
know.
Nana and I were talking about it yesterday. So Nana dressed up as Brawly, which is, I don't know anime like that. That's his jam, but he dressed up as a character and we went to the St. Patrick's Day parade. Well, we ended up being in the parade. And this is where, like, just being in the moment is so powerful because he's dressed up. We're in the parade. These kids and people are high-fiving us. We're able, Nana's giving away his bracelets because these kids are wanting it. And I just was like, you can't, you cannot make this up. You cannot
Mm.
make this life up. And so it really is giving yourself permission to, like, not try to control things so much and go with
Mm.
the flow, because what the universe or what your spirit or what you're guided to is far greater than you can ever imagine. We cannot possibly plan for the things that will happen to us when we allow ourselves to just be present in the moment without filter and limit.
Mm. I'm
Well,
hearing
most of the
unconditional joy.
yeah,
All the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's not to say spiritually bypass. Like, guys, here's the thing. I share all the time very openly. Like, I was just in the bathroom sobbing earlier. I had energy come up and I needed to release it, right? It's honoring your experience in the moment. And, for people who haven't allowed themselves to experience their emotions, I will preface this by saying, in the beginning it's harder because you're feeling emotions from all the years that you've allowed them to sit in your body. So maybe, I don't know, watching a movie where you allow yourself to cry, you start full out sobbing, you have no idea why you're in like this hyperventilating, booger coming down your face state, right, for 20 minutes. 22 is actually what science says is the most you really experience that deep, like, suffering. But
Mm.
over time, I can cry for a half a second and then truly come back to joy. Like, it's not this false putting on a costume or like a mask saying, "Oh, I got my show, so I have to show up in joy." No, like, I let myself feel my feelings, and then I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna wobble my way into the show," and then I just show up in joy.
Mm. Yesterday afternoon after my meeting, I was still filled with joy. And when I was sharing it with my boyfriend later, I'm still filled with joy. And all of these emotions were coming up, all these tears. And then it went into a more serious conversation, and I had even more tears. And I was like, wow, I hadn't realized that I had been holding all of that in. because of fear. That's literally what it was. Fear was holding me back. The anxiety of whatever thoughts we were talking about, whatever conversation we were talking about. Because to be honest, I can remember most of it, but most of it's like, well, now it's done, it's over with,
Yep.
and that emotion's been released, and so we can move forward. And I think that's where most people who hold on to their feelings, they don't realize that once you release it, sometimes you don't even recall it. It's
Yeah.
gone.
Well, and you're not meant to. Like, and that's why I fundamentally feel that there's just so much narrative that we need to think our way into healing. And I don't know, I do not believe that. I think logic will get you trapped into more ego, will get you trapped into this idea that you have to come up with a plan to heal yourself. You got to do all these retreats, you got to do all this stuff. That's BS. Healing happens in the present moment. And I share this story. My oldest sister passed away, and her cat was in her apartment with her body for a couple of days, and that obviously the cat was starving. So when I came to her apartment and the neighbor who had the cat went to bring the cat back into the apartment, cat spazzed out. Right now I'm disassociated because I'm just trying to get through the fact that my sister died unexpectedly. Fast forward, I'm watching the movie Hunger Games, the last scene where Katniss goes into the room and the cat, Prim's cat, comes in through the window and Prim dies. And I just lose it. None of the
Mm,
girls are in there with me, and I just straight out lose it. I didn't make up a story. I didn't judge myself. In that, I released everything that was in my body that had presented itself when my sister passed away that I couldn't have honored at the time because I was just trying to get through that experience to, make my way
mhm,
out of it. But that's why I tell people, you don't I'm sorry, like talk therapy can help, but you don't have to go to 20 years of talk therapy to heal.
mm,
You don't even have to go. You just have to give yourself permission to honor what's coming up in the present moment without judgment. And in doing that, you release the emotion and you heal without having to think about it.
mm,
And I was gonna say, if somebody doesn't know how to release an emotion, it's just to let it happen instead
Yep.
of suppressing it. You're not like actually releasing it. You're not opening something. Well, it could be if you're using imagination or anything to get to that point. If you're more of visual or whatever way, if you found the tools that work to help you release emotions, but not suppressing it, it's enough to let that emotion um, go through the body, because
Yep.
that's emotion, it's energy in motion. Basically, you're allowing that energy to play out any way it's supposed to play it out. Dancing or laughing or crying or whatever. But a lot of the times when we suppress our emotions, then we're kind of like instinctively or not allowing ourselves to feel the emotions, then they get trapped into the body. And it's easily understood. And like Kerri was saying, you don't have to go to a retreat to get that, because you have plenty of opportunities through life for people to trigger you, to reflect back, to bring that out of you, to let it process it. And at the beginning, when I was thinking and starting to analyze a lot of things, I was thinking, well, back in the day, people were going in caves to be by themselves and to process whatever they need to process, or go in silent retreats and other things like that. But then you're missing those opportunities from the mirrors. You're missing that
mm,
interaction where people are gonna trigger something that'll arise, and it's okay. It's not that they're bad people because they're not living your experience. They're just triggering the thing that's supposed to come out of you. So in a way, you can thank them and say, "Well, thank you for triggering this out and bringing it out of me so I can see it and allow it to process through the body to get that energy to move. Because once it's done, it's done. It's not gonna repeat itself." Kind of like thoughts, they come and go. You can't predict your thoughts. Same with emotions. They come out, they were trapped in the body. And so, yeah, that's all I wanted to add to it.
yeah, I wanna share when a story, if you don't mind, when,
Oh, no, no, that's why we're here. It's all
yeah,
open conversation.
my emotions were trapped in my body, and I didn't even didn't even realize it, didn't thought I had processed it. So I love that we're talking about processing emotion logically and feeling it, right? Because I think there are two separate things. I think some people do the, oh, I've processed this, I've analyzed it, I'm done with it, it's okay, but they haven't actually took time to feel the feelings. And I
Mhm.
love that you're sharing about being in the moment and not judging and just allowing that emotion to flow through. My mom had was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I was driving back and forth from where I lived to where she lived every other weekend, a 4-hour drive, and I would take care of her. And I did that every other week for 14 months. And during this time, on Mondays, I would typically drive back home because then I had to go to work on Tuesdays. And I started to do two things on those Monday evenings when I got back home. One, I started to do improv classes, which totally helped me get out of my mind, right? And in back into my body. And then after those classes were over, I switched it up to Krav Maga self-defense
I
classes.
did that.
Yeah. And it was so powerful that after my mom had passed, it was several months later, they were doing a workshop weekend on like how to defend yourself in a carjacking situation. And it was an intense 3 days. It was Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And then I had class Monday night. And I remember when going into this going, I'm going to be a completely different person on the other side of this weekend. And on Sunday, I laid there after it was all over and we were into stretching and doing yoga, and I couldn't stop crying. I mean, I was like doing the ugly cry. Thank God in my head, I'm like, thank God the radio's up because I didn't want anybody to hear me. But I had been re-triggered because at some point we were taking guns, fake guns, and pointing them at our partner's head. And then, it's getting pointed at my head. And I didn't even process it until years later that I was being re-triggered from when my ex-boyfriend had pointed a gun at my head, right? And then all of a sudden these emotions come up. And after I leave there, I'm literally in my car and I had this guttural sound verbally escaping my body through my mouth is the only way I can describe it. I have never made this sound before or heard this sound out of me before. And I did that for the whole, at least, 30 minutes to drive home. And I was like, wow, I had no idea any of that was trapped in there. And yet when it was over and I got home, my body was shaking. It was like I had, which I did. I had worked out and ran several marathons after all that movement, all that training. But my body and my mind and my soul felt so much better and at peace
Yep.
because I didn't realize that I had been hoarding, and I'm going to use that word because that's what I feel we do sometimes, is we hoard the emotion because we're too afraid to feel it because we think it's going to do something that we don't want it to do.
First off, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story. It's very beautiful and powerful, and I think it highlights to the community the work that you've done. And I see you, and I appreciate that. Um, and second of all, the other thing I want to highlight for the community that it's super important. So we have to disassociate to survive, right? When I was in a very abusive relationship, getting my face punched in, being traumatized with sexual abuse and stuff, I couldn't necessarily allow myself to like process that feeling. I had to
Right.
go through it. And I think the same holds true for you, Shay. Like,
Yep.
we got to do what we got to do to get through these experiences. So we don't even know we're hoarding it, right? We
Right.
process it like you said. We logically, okay, I didn't deserve to get beaten. I didn't deserve to be sexually assaulted. I didn't deserve. And that's where that healing is like peeling layers of an onion. Is it's
Yes.
over time you heal. Like having experienced two rapes, like it took me 20 years from the first time I cried about it to being able to one, hug one of the people who assaulted me, but two, not have this real emotional attachment to the experience. It was just an experience, but it took 20 years of being triggered, feeling my feelings, releasing, freeing, and letting go, and then being triggered. And it's over a course of time. And so, the other thing I encourage people to think about, and I talk to them a lot about this when it comes to forgiveness.
Mm.
Forgiveness is just like any other thing. It's a choice, moment by moment, right? I thought I'd forgive my parents when I was 20, but then 22 came up and I was hot and tight with them. So I chose to forgive them again. 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 Now, I'd like to believe that I'm in this space where I'm at peace with my parents and how they showed up in my life and they did the best they could. But I don't know. There very well could be something that comes up that causes me to have to re-experience whatever it is that comes up for me so that I can release it and forgive again. And so again, guys, that's where this curiosity and freedom from judgment of yourself is critical,
Mm.
because in that ability to just stay in the present moment, you really just allow yourself to truly heal and to show up and be that loving person that, we all are at our core, but that feels disconnected from others because of the wounds we've experienced.
Mm. Do you both have a forgiveness exercise that you help your clients with?
Oh yeah.
Walk through? Yeah. Share.
Mm.
Share it, because I know the audience is like, "Oh, that's great to say. That's
Yeah.
great to, like, listen to," but share that exercise, because I think I'm pretty sure we're all gonna have 3 different experiences, but I think it's just so vital, especially in this day and age, that forgiveness is so important.
Yeah. Well, so I will say that I often refer to a lot of the exercises in the Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu, and I'm going to butcher this poor lady's name, Mofoso Tutu. He was an archbishop in South Africa and went through apartheid with Nelson Mandela. And the reason I like it is one of his exercises that I use even when I was in leadership and with my leadership team about keeping their thoughts to themselves is picking up a rock. And it's so interesting because Al used this yesterday when we were talking to him about forgiveness. But it's true. It's what I use too. It's picking up a rock, even a small rock. It doesn't have to be the big one that Al shared, right? A small rock and carrying it around with you, taking it through everything. You cannot put this rock down. Now, I want you to think about, in the beginning, even the small rock might seem, it's trivial, doesn't matter. By the end of the day, when you're trying to do these things with a rock in your hand, it's very cumbersome. And so
Mm.
examining that and then recognizing how forgiveness, right? And I'm even going to tie this into speaking your truth, because a lot of people don't talk about what their needs are because they don't want to impose themselves on somebody else. And that's a whole other story, because that keeps you separate and you'll never get your needs met if you don't share them. Yeah, you may lose people who say it can't meet your needs, but you'll gain a whole lot of other people who will meet your needs by speaking them. But picking up that rock and examining it and feeling into that and realizing that you're weighing yourself down by not releasing that, and it's judgment, and it's for yourself, it's not for anybody else. Buddha says, like, it's like picking up a hot stone, burning stone, and throwing at somebody. You're both going to get burnt. So can you give yourself permission to let it go?
Mm. Great exercise. I love that.
What about you, Yanko? Oh,
You got me off radio. I have the steps written out of the protocol where I go and I can't find it.
the protocol.
I have a protocol that I take him to, but basically it goes to understanding. And because if you can understand the point of view of the other person, then you can relate to that other person, and it's more likely to be able to forgive themselves and then allow them to do the forgiveness and then forgive yourself also because you were in that situation. But there are a couple of steps that I walk him through that I don't have right now. But that's
Well,
that's the gist of it.
I will add that I always encourage people to consider hurt people,
Because they're
right?
hurting. Yeah.
Yeah, if
Right.
you and me are in joy, I'm not going to actively seek out to wound Shay. Now, could I potentially say something that might trigger her? Maybe. But then in her self-love for herself, she's gonna be like, "Hey, Kerri, what you said," and then we can honestly be like, "Yo, like my intention was to," right? And that's really understanding, like, if somebody's hurt you, it's because they themselves are hurt.
Mm.
And again, how many times have we as individuals hurt people unintentionally or intentionally, depending? And can we forgive ourselves for that? Because we really do the very best we can with the information we have at the time.
That's exactly
Mm.
what I was gonna say. They're not bad people. They're just doing the best they can with their given resources at that given time. That's
Yep.
the best they can do. I mean, if they thought they had a bigger picture, more resources, more other things, they could have chose something else instead.
What
So
about you,
yeah,
Shay? What is your practice?
Yeah, so I am a huge believer in journaling because of that rewiring your brain. And yeah, exactly. And so I have my clients, and I've done it many times myself. I had one, in fact, I'll even share my story about it. I figured out I was angry. And I was like, "Whoo, I'm angry. And what am I angry about?" And I sat with that for a while. And I was driving to work one day, and I turned on the radio, and I was listening to Christian talk radio, and the minister on the show said, "Do you have a list of people you're angry with?" And I was like, "No, that's what I need. I need a list." And so I took out my fast food napkin that was in my console and unwrapped it and took my pen, and I'm writing down all the names that were just flowing to me, and I'm writing them down, and I'm like, I filled the front and the back of that napkin, my God. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do with this? And I just took a day and decided I'm going to throw myself a pity party. And I got all my favorite snacks and all the things. And I got out my journal and I wrote a note to each person of what I really wanted to say, cuss words and all, about the situation that I was angry about. And then I said, "Will you forgive me?" And then I said, "I forgive you." And then I said, "God, do you forgive me for holding on to this anger?" And I did that list through each person, and it was such a major release. I realized after that I had no more anger. And now what I do with my clients is I have them do the same thing, talking about speaking your authentic truth, is write that message to them. You don't have to send it. You light it on fire, rip it off, get rid of it. But when you get it all out of everything that you really want to tell them, that's when the release really happens. And I'm a full proponent of a pen, an actual pen, not a device, a pen or crayon, pencil, marker, whatever, and paper, and getting that released out of you. It's huge, huge.
Yeah, I agree. Or talk to text. I encourage my clients, if you're not going to sit and write, talk to text. You know what I mean? Go out in the woods, give yourself permission to just speak your truth wherever you feel safe to do so, and
Mhm.
don't filter it. I think so often we judge ourselves. Oh, I shouldn't be mad at so
Mhm.
and so because it's over something silly, right?
Yep.
But even that limits your ability to, one, learn yourself, right? Because if you're mad at somebody over something seemingly silly, it's just a trigger coming up for you. And it's your ability to then nurture yourself so that you can release that. And so whatever way feels right for you is what's going to work. But I do 100% agree with Shay. Like, you got to speak your truth,
Mm.
and you can't judge yourself for that truth.
Mm.
well, imagination also works a lot,
Mm.
with that kind of stuff. If you can imagine a thing, then it'll become a thing, and then it'll trigger your emotions and everything else. Um, in meditation or visualization or any kind of way where you can bring that person in your mind's eye in the front of you and get that authentic emotion to come out and tell them, because for one reason or another you didn't feel like you're safe to do that facing that person or in situation, or maybe there were other things and they didn't let you express your emotional state, then you have a chance to do that. Be able to imagine that person in the front of you going through the whole thing, and then letting them tell you how they feel, to be able to understand and have that thing kind of like a conversation within to allow that to happen. And when that happens, it's done. Um, it's kind of like the law of attraction. If you imagine something, you attract it. So if you change it in your mind, then it's changed, it's gone. You feel better afterwards.
Mm. I want to say something to what we're saying about speaking your authentic truth, even if it was like Kerri mentioned 20 years ago. And then you're beating yourself up because you're like, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? What does it matter now? And I want to share that when you're in fear, our brains kick in to fight, flight, freeze,
Yep.
or people please.
Yep.
And the freeze part is so overlooked because people are like, well, I didn't freeze, like my body wasn't frozen. No, but your mind does.
Yep.
So your mind can shut down to preserve yourself, right? Because a lot of times we go through trauma, we want to be disassociated. So we check out, but it freezes. And then at some point of time, that's when we've been talking about being present with it. At some point in time later, it'll come back up once you're triggered again. And just knowing and being non-judgmental and loving to yourself and accepting that this is just your process. And it's okay that you froze so many years ago. And now is the time to release it.
Yeah. And the thing is, guys, there's like 9 billion people on the planet, 8 billion, whatever it is. 8 billion different people who process things differently. And at the end of the day, you're responsible for yourself. And what I know I can say is, I want you to know joy. I want you to know peace. I want you to know freedom from, condemnation and this idea that you're separate and alone, because it's not true. But you can't get there unless you give yourself permission to do the very thing that Shay and Yanko and myself are talking about. And in the beginning, it's scary, and I totally get it. But that's why you find somebody who can hold space for you and love you where you're at, rather than having an expectation of where you think you need to be. It's not that they're there to tell you what to do or how to do it. It's just simply to bear witness to you as you go through this journey and love you through it. So, if this feels hard, or really even you're catching yourself in resistance to any of the process, I think that I know I can speak for me. I've been that person who was so disassociated, so unconscious, so numbed out to the world.
Mhm.
And
Me
through
too.
these small moments of doing it differently, I experienced a peace and a profound love that at one point in my life seemed so unobtainable. So I really encourage you all to start where you are at and find somebody who can hold space for you in a loving way where you're at.
Mm. I think it's Oprah who says you have to be fearless enough to love yourself so that your inner child feels it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Mm.
And I really believe we can list all these emotions, but I think when you deduce it, really, there's like fear and then there's love. I think
Mm.
fear presents in a myriad of emotions: anger, sadness, apathy, guilt, whatever. But um it's just that moment by moment recognizing that something other than compassion, joy, love is coming up for you, and then just getting curious. Ooh, what's coming up for me? And that will unlock peace.
Mm.
It will take time. I'm not here to say It was a one and done journey, guys. Like the road was arduous for me. And it's so funny. That's why I hit up Al yesterday. I said, man, you and me been through the wars. Like we faced down Goliath or whoever. I was like, I'm ringing that from the rooftop because I want other people to know I faced the fire and went through it. I went into Hades. I said I'm going to come down from heaven, drop into hell, and pull myself up. And that is worth celebrating. It really is. Even if all you did today was get out of bed, make your bed, pull the sheets back up, and get back in the bed, you made your bed. And that's enough.
Mm.
Well, not only that, but also some sort of gratitude for recognizing what happened, even if you think nothing happened, thing actually happened that are positive, but we're just tend to concentrate on the negative things in life.
Mm.
So that's usually what brings out that negativity and everything else. And even if you're in bad, you can't take yourself out of the world. You're in this world, so things are going to happen, and there's going to be positive and negative. And if you do the um, retrospect, or if you finish your day and you go back and start from the end back to the beginning of the day, looking back and what happened, you're going to recognize that plenty of good stuff happened. And you're kind of going to be happy about yourself, and you're going to be like, yeah, that was a great day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it's about looking at what's happened is happening for us and not to
hmm,
us.
that's right.
Yeah.
With a few minutes left, Shay, is there any imparting wisdom that you would like to leave with the listening audience today?
Mm. Mm. Be kind to yourself with curious exploration of the parts of you you've been denying or holding back, and just allow yourself grace and the gift of love as you process it out, whether that's feeling it out, throwing a rock, holding onto that rock, forgiving it out, whatever that looks like for you. Just allow yourself, give yourself that permission of grace and kindness and love.
I love that. What about you, Yanko?
As usual, I want to thank everyone for sticking around, watching our show. I'm really grateful for the audience and for our guests and everybody else. And wishing everyone a great weekend.
And I'm going to leave it with this. And this is just real talk, guys. Nobody's come to save you. As much as I wish that were true, nobody can. You've got to save yourself. So, to Shay's point, choose compassion, choose curiosity, choose kindness, even when it's really difficult. But take one small step forward, even if it's recognizing that right now you're not happy. That's a step. That's being real. That's being truthful to yourself. Because as much as Shay, Yanko, myself, and thousands, if not millions of other people are showing up and offering our insights and wisdom, ultimately it's gonna be your journey and you're responsible for freeing yourself.
Mm. Yeah, you're responsible to share your wins. Mm.
Yeah, baby, and you wins. And on that,
I love it. How we circle back and we'll
Yep.
close it up.
deep
Thank you,
Wonderful.
guys.
Shay,
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
joining us. You are welcome anytime. Until next time, guys, we will catch you next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Central. And we love you.